This will be the final session as well for this Azure series of classes. So this will be Azure Fundamentals we're completing. For those who look to take it a next step, I'll provide some steps of what we need to do towards the end of the class. So we spoke in terms of cloud concepts. We spoke about cloud core services. We also spoke about security, privacy, and compliance. So all those elements of Azure, there is a cost for it. There's some things you get for free, with some limitations, and some of the things which allows you to do some advanced cool stuff to meet business needs, or even to meet your own personal needs, which are paid for services. So in terms of Azure itself, you will need a subscription, which allows you to be identified as a user, which allows you to be identified as an organization, which then gives you access to log in into Azure's services. This is also controlled by identity, which is from Azure Active Directory. So within Azure Active Directory, there are some trust policies set up. Subscriptions in themselves, they're basically a logical unit of Azure services. So you can have multiple subscriptions depending on the organizational needs. So as it says on the very last line of this slide here, an account can have one subscription or multiple subscriptions. So pretty sure you're now thinking, okay, we need to have a subscription. How are we going to go about it? One thing you need to understand, in most organizations, you will have a development environment, then a testing environment, and then the production. So in terms of Azure, it will be a dev subscription. That's where you can go and play around and test things. I will explain to you what is the cost in terms of a dev subscription or test subscription. So before we go a bit more into it, one thing I want to mention to you, it's an organization. Before you even start saying, okay, this is Microsoft Azure Cloud, you also need to understand the cost of it before you just go to an organization and say, okay, yeah, this is Azure, let's go for it. You need to be in a position to demonstrate to that organization. And throughout this session, I will be able to show you how we can look at those cost elements. So you have a free pay-as-you-go subscription. So when I mean free pay-as-you-go, what I mean by that is you can set up your own subscription, which will give you 12 months of the most popular Microsoft services. They'll give you $200, not in cash, as in credit, and you can use that credit to set up things, to test what is in Azure. In some cases, what tends to happen, you might realize, okay, I need to expand this a bit more. You always have an option to upgrade. So you can actually upgrade your subscription, start paying either some monthly cost, depending on what services you're consuming. You also have enterprise agreements. So when we talk about enterprise agreements, an organization could say to Microsoft, this is what we have in terms of infrastructure-wise. We need to move to the cloud. So when we are talking about this conversation about moving to the cloud, one thing you'll notice, there's something called TCO. So basically what TCO means is a total cost of ownership. So in this case, the organization you're working for or this specific organization will have a requirement. They have their own data center. They have their own servers. So they need to be able to understand how much is it costing us to go to the cloud? Is it going to be expensive for us, or is it going to be cheaper for us? As I said in the very first session, for those who joined that session, um, it works both ways. It can be very, very cheap to be on the cloud, and at the same time, it can be very, very costly as compared to being on premise. So as we go along through this pricing session, I will explain to you some of the things for you to look out for and some of the things you need to keep in mind. So Microsoft Drive is to make sure our colleagues, those students who are learning, they also have an option for that student subscription. The student subscription, it's a discounted subscription. So it allows them to use some of the services to learn and at the same time to try out things. But again, the end goal is the same. If you're a student, you use the Microsoft Azure services, they become interesting for you to have um, more access to the other advanced items. You then need to put your credit card details there. So we spoke about the free pay-as-you-go. So that pay-as-you-go can also be done by an organization. It can be done by a person. However, there's also a personal subscription. This is specific to yourself, myself and yourself, not an organization. So I can have a subscription myself, whereby I just want to learn, I want to try out things, or in some cases, I'm planning to be an entrepreneur. I need to have these systems in place. So I can start with a personal one, understand what's in there and what I need going forward. So once I understand what I need going forward, the next step will be to upgrade the subscription. And once you upgrade the subscription, you are now in a position to say, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I can use Azure for. So we spoke about what you get within a free account. For those of you who want to explore this, um, this is the site you need to go to. So these slides will be shared at the end of the session. However, I would encourage some of you to keep in mind of this URL here. That's where you can have your own a free subscription. One of the things you need to remember for you to be able to use this free subscription, when your subscription finishes, they also need an option to bill somebody. They also need to make money. So you will be required to put your card details there so they know who you are. So that's one of the mechanisms. They know that this is a real person, it's not a ghost. So once you put your details there, you need to remember what you have, $200 in credit, what you need to use. If you happen to go over 200, they don't automatically just take money from your account. They'll tell you what you're trying to use is more than what you're giving you. So if you happen to say, okay, yes, 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 of course, the money will come out of your account. And if the money is not there, most of the times they'll send you an email. If they cannot reach out to you, normally what happens is they'll just close your subscription. In most cases, when it gets to a point where they're closing your subscription, if you had put any information or any data within these Azure services, then you have lost out. There's nothing for you you can use with that data you have within Azure. So if you use your 200 credit, what you can do, you can either upgrade or you can just disable the account. So one of the things I can advise you to do here is if you have another email address, you can always sign up for another free account, and then you use different services in 2 different subscriptions. So that's something you need to keep in mind. So it's all well and good for you to learn, to look at YouTube videos, to go to Microsoft Learn, you look at the material, but having that hands-on experience of you knowing to say, okay, I can click here this is what they say in the text. Goes a long way in your understanding of what's happening in Azure. Do we have any questions so far? Are we together? If we're together, can we say yes? If it's going a bit too fast, please feel free to say. We can slow it down or we can re-explain things. Okay, so there's nothing in the chat window just yet. We'll keep an eye on that. So we're going to go to the next slide here. So we're now talking about management groups. So in terms of management groups, an organization can have different management groups. They can have loads of subscriptions. So you can imagine a multinational organization. They don't want things happening in a specific location to be managed elsewhere. They want to manage it themselves. Vice versa, an organization could say, okay, we want our services to be managed from this location, depending on any organizational needs. So these subscriptions inherit some of these conditions which are applied. So why are management groups important? So management groups are important in terms of billing, the billing side of it. So depending how many subscriptions you have, depending on what resources you're using. So if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, you have a virtual machine right at the bottom. You have a SQL box, which is a SQL server. So if you can look at it from a different perspective and you have mostly SQL boxes running at that bottom line, SQL requires a lot of RAM, a lot of CPU processing power. So what that means is that becomes a bit more costly. So one might ask and say, okay, what is it we can do with SQL? In terms of SQL, some organization depends to use something called always on, which helps to replicate their data. And if there's any data or failures, they can just restore from one of these locations. So that's why it becomes very expensive on the cloud. Where else, if you have it on premise, it's all managed by yourself. So we have a question here from our colleague who says, how long could a company use Azure Pay as you go for free? So in terms of a company, normally what you get with the free subscription for an organization, most of it you want to achieve a lot of your ambitions. So a free subscription will be mainly for a person. So there's two things here. There's a pay-as-you-go subscription, and then there is a free pay-as-you-go subscription. So the free pay-as-you-go subscription is mostly just for feasibility. So the answer here, how long is it in terms of a pay-as-you-go subscription? That's 12 months. After 12 months, they'll start asking you questions. Do you want to upgrade? And they'll give you a time frame. And if you don't respond, what they'll do is they'll give you some days to say after 30 days or after 14 days, your account will be disabled. So subscriptions groups together user accounts. They can bring resources together. You can also have Azure secret keys to help your security. So there's quite a lot of things involved here. So going back to the costing element of things, you need to be very careful when you decide to choose Microsoft Azure or AWS or even Google Cloud, of what you're putting in that cloud, how it's going to work. If you just say, okay, yeah, cloud is the best thing ever around, let's just throw everything there, it can become very, very costly. So in terms of purchasing these services, there's quite a few options you can do. So for enterprise organizations, you can sign an enterprise agreement with Microsoft Azure, which commits yourself, your organization, to a spending which is negotiated on the services you're using. So normally this is as per year. They don't normally do it for 2 months or for 1 month. Normally it's for a year. And at the same time, you have access as an enterprise organization to customized um, billing. So your billing itself is not going to be as expensive as just anybody else. One of the other things you get as well as an enterprise organization, if you have this agreement in place with Microsoft, they also give you some hours. So when I mean some hours, they give you person-to-person training. They help your organization to train them to understand the basics and to understand how Microsoft Azure works. And also they tailor that training to meet your organizational needs. So at that way, in doing so, it helps your organization to have a base level of what Microsoft Azure is and how it works and how it makes a difference within your organization. So Microsoft themselves, they also have resellers. So in terms of resellers, these are nominated people. They've been thoroughly vetted by Microsoft, and all their job is to sell these Microsoft products. These people, they know what these products are. So when you speak to them, when you have a conversation with them, they know what product they can recommend for you. So again, this is a third party. So it's not Microsoft. It's an organization which does something to just sell these products. And there's so many of those. I'll show you where we find those and how we can contact them. You also have Microsoft partners. So for those of you who joined the Dynamics class on Friday, that tutor who delivered that class, Dan, he has his organization is a Microsoft partner. So what that means is that organization has access to Microsoft products. What that means, that organization can purchase Microsoft Cloud on your behalf, and then they can go through setup for you. And if you need more assistance in more or less setting up these services, that partner can guide you to make that journey, either from coming from on-premise to the cloud, or if you're starting your journey on the cloud, that organization can do that for you. But again, what you need to remember, resellers and partners, when they start providing these services for you, they're not free. There is a cost which is involved. So how to become a Microsoft reseller or partner? So in terms of how to become a Microsoft reseller or partner, there is a site which I'll share with you. You go through a lot of some vetting and some checks just to make sure you're a credible organization and you represent the values and ethics of Microsoft when you're selling their products. So I'll share that for you, that link for you at the end of this session. So here are some of the factors which affect the cost. So some of the factors, I'm sure you can see it on the screen. Some of them which might not be on the screen here is compute hours. How long that virtual machine is running on the cloud. Data transfer in, data coming in, data going out. So data coming in and data going out, that is called data transfer in and data transfer out, vice versa. Instead of the disks as well, you have disks for data storage. Those are priced differently. So there's managed disk, there's a standard managed disk operations. There is something called DTUs, which is data transaction units. So the more you have of those DTUs or data transaction units, the faster your SQL database runs in this example. So you need to look exactly at what you are using and what you're not using. There's no point of saying, okay, we are going to have the fastest SQL database on the cloud when your organization doesn't have a lot of operations for SQL, which require SQL. So again, like I mentioned previously, the cost and the billing periods, they differ from the organization. So like I said, an enterprise organization, normally it's a year, but believe me or not, many organizations, they'll say, let's go for a 5-year agreement. Some say, let's go for a 3-year agreement. Some say, let's go for a 2-year agreement. Again, this depends on the strategic direction of the organization. There's also something here which is Web Direct. So when we say Web Direct, you can go direct to the Microsoft site and do this yourself. So once you have this, you can decide this is what I need, you pay for it. Again, in some cases, you see it, the price might be different from what you're seeing as an enterprise organization, because an enterprise organization is paying way, way more than yourself. So that small segment you're using yourself as compared to an enterprise organization might be different. So we also have CSP customers. So these are cloud solution providers. So again, the cost, all these things affect the cost. The location. Why is the location so important? Does anyone want to guess in the chat window why the location is so important in terms of factoring cost here? While I'm waiting for someone to type in the window in regards to that, we have a question here which says, is the free version of Azure enough to set up a CI or CD pipeline? Can you kindly explain what that pipeline is so I can have an idea exactly of what we are talking about here? So again, we're just waiting for someone to type in here. So we haven't got anyone typing in about the location, why it's important. So you can imagine if you're using a location as the United States has more services onto Azure more than any other location in the whole world. So the matter of the fact that they have more uh, in their location, that means there's going to be high demand for their services. That means it's more expensive as well. If you compare, as an example, the United States, Europe, and Africa, and you also have Asia as well, they also have different services in those locations. Main reason being is in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, some of the services, they are not needed in Africa, they're not needed in Asia, they're not needed in Europe. So the cost will be different. So it's also important for you to understand, okay, I'm going to locate my services in this area. But again, one can start thinking, okay, if I'm paying more in the Americas region, because that's where the service is, why is not Microsoft bringing it to my region as well? So the way it is business, as we all understand. So in terms of Microsoft, they're not just going to bring a service to Europe just for my own organization. They will firstly do their marketing, get some analytics to see the demand of that product. So once they know the demand of their product, they can deploy the service. So they won't just deploy straight away. It will come in preview for you to have a look at it and to gauge interest as well. Once the interest is there, the service comes. So, okay, we have something from Ade, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Yes, the free version will give you that. The only problem is there's some limitation you won't be able to do for too long. It will give you very limited items you can do with it. So again, one of the things I need to stress here is the free version of Azure is designed for you to understand what Azure is and also to entice you to spend money. If you understand, okay, to say, okay, yeah, this achieves what I'm looking to do, normally what happens is you go to the next step and you purchase the service. So in terms of does it work? Yes, it does work, but it's not the same as compared to a paid one. So we go to the next one. We covered the billing zones. So if you see, we have West US, West Europe, and others, Australia, Japan. So again, these are all different locations. So what that also means, it's there's also bandwidth involved in moving in and out of these data centers. So you can imagine if there's a higher cost in terms of bandwidth. So for you to understand here, when you're talking about bandwidth, that cost goes to Microsoft because they have to get the data to you, right? And then when it gets into your network, then that's your cost. You're now paying for that bandwidth within your network. So when it's outside and it's moving across the globe, that's Microsoft, but they pass on the cost to their customers. So again, that's why again the billing of this bandwidth, you gotta be very, very careful. In some cases, like I said in the very first session, if your organization operates in the UK, in some cases, it's not ideal for you to even think of having your data in the US. So apart from the cost element of it, you also have to think of local regulations, things like GDPR. Again, these regulations, they differ per country, they differ per region. So it's also important to look at these things before you do it. So of course, we're talking towards cost here, but also keep in mind of our local regulations. So we mentioned before this conversation starts, for Azure with your organization, please make sure you check the cost. So here we're talking about the pricing calculator. What is a pricing calculator? So this is an online tool which has been produced by Microsoft to help you understand what is the cost of Microsoft Azure. So I'm going to show you the pricing calculator so you see what it is. So can you guys see my screen? If I can just get some yeses in the chat window so I know you can see my screen. Okay, so we're getting some yeses or some stuff. So basically, this is again the URL. You can just go into your Google search and say Microsoft pricing calculator. It will definitely come up, that's for sure. So what you're seeing in here, this is not Microsoft Azure. It's just a pricing calculator to give you a flavor of the cost you want to dive into yourself in your organization. And before we dive into the pricing calculator, what you can also see here, they're telling you free account. They're telling you get one, learn. And eventually you sign up to it because you now know the cost of it. Now you want to learn. They always tell you, there you go, it's for you, try it out. So with this pricing calculator, you can see the very first tab in here, it's got products, it's got example scenarios, it's got saved estimates. So we're talking about, in this example, I'm going to go for a business analyst. So as a business analyst, are you going to understand networking? Are you going to understand Internet of Things, IoT? Are you going to understand storage? Are you going to understand security? The straight answer here most likely is no. So in most organizations, you will have experts who cover these areas. They'll need to provide you those specs of these things. They'll also have access to this. But for you to have an understanding of Microsoft Azure, you need to understand that this is available. So we're going to look at a virtual machine. So if you see in here, it's now saying virtual machine added. I'm going to say view. So where is it gone? Here, I'm going to select view. And if you can see, I have a virtual machine, which will be in West United States. It's running on a Windows machine. I just want an operating system only. And a tier is running in a standard. So a standard is basically the minimum. If you see, you have basic, low priority, standard. There's also another one which is called premium. So you see you are now here, the instance is running 8 gig of RAM, it's running 50 gig of temporary storage, and this is how much it's costing you per hour. And this is one machine. You have 730 hours of this running. And if you can see, we spoke about the pay-as-you-go subscription, we spoke about the 1 year, we spoke about 3 year. So what we have currently set up at the moment, we have set it up as a pay-as-you-go virtual machine, and it will cost 152 and 62 US dollars. And what you can see, apart from the pricing in itself, it also gives you support. So if you see support in here, you also have, if you're a developer, standard, professional, direct. So again, all those will be included in this cost. Program and offers. So you see a Microsoft Online Service Agreement. So again, there's an SLA here. So keep going. You see the price is now estimated monthly cost 915. So this is based on 730 hours. So we're going to change this and bring it to UK West. Can you see we brought it to UK West? It's slightly cheaper. And now we're going to change location. If you see, keep in mind of this monthly cost here. So if you change it to Germany North, if you see that's more pricey. So again, most organizations, they will ask for this. They want to understand the cost and say, okay, tell us how much it's going to cost. So again, let's look for another one where we can actually see a different cost as well. I'm going to go for France Central. Again, that's slightly cheaper. So it's all well and good with seeing these prices, but if you're working for an organization in the UK, the straight area you're going for is UK West or UK South. You don't need to go to UK West, you don't need to UK, you don't need to go to UAE, it's UK. And then the cost is based on that. If they need to expand on it, then it's up to the organization. So again, this here might not be enough for what we are looking to use it for. So if I change this, before I change it, let me go and change it to 1 year reserved. If you see, there's now a discount because you're committing to more. So Microsoft are selling more because they know you're going to be with them for a year. And within that year, I can assure you, they always do a very good job in providing you some more amazing systems which you get enticed to look into, and normally you go and get it. So this is 120.80 free, and if you decide to go for 3 years with them, that's 103. So it looks to be a very, very big difference, but again, from a business perspective, they know you are with them. Within that 3 years, they know they're going to add some more things to you, some things which will add value to your organization. So again, here, most of the organization you see here is always a 1 year or 3 year. Pay as you go, very, very slim. You're likely to see pay as you go in either non-profit organizations who are still starting up or any startup organization who do not know where they're going to get up to. So I'm going to change this, as I said, and we're going to go for the highest. So not the highest, but let's go for 512 GB. And now you can see the cost. So you can see that's about 3,443 over 3 years. And this is just for one machine. Believe me or not, the organization won't have just one virtual machine. They'll have so many of them. So the question you need to be asking yourself here, if you happen to be given this task to go and look at this, normally from organizations I've worked with, they normally like to give this task to a business analyst and say, can you look at this for us? Of course, you're not alone. There's other teams you need to work with. So it's more or less your job now to understand from these teams exactly what they currently have and where you're going to go to in terms of direction. So again, we're talking about 3,443. Why, as a pay-as-you-go customer, would you go and use this? It's almost double. So again, that's some of the disadvantages of having pay-as-you-go. So if you see these costs now, you are now in a position to say, okay, this is what we need to do in our organization. This is where we're going to go. And we spoke about partners. If you see straight away in here, there's something that says partners. So in here, it tells you find your partner. Those are the Microsoft partners who can help you with this journey, with this. So if you scroll further down and you can go for purchase options, and you see this is how you can buy it. You can actually contact them for a representative from Microsoft to reach out to you, or you can go for a cloud solution provider or a partner. So if you click on here, again, like I said, I'll show you how to get to your partner. So here you can get to partners. You can start getting a partner to contact you. So if you see contact me, normally they contact you on the next working day. So in here, they'll call you, they'll discuss your requirements, and they'll tell you, okay, yeah, this is what we need. That's the best way to go. So I'm going to go back a step to our slides here. So we're talking about total cost ownership. So in terms of total cost ownership, that's why we said TCO. So what that means is we are looking at the cost of having a computer sitting in your own building. You're talking about the cost of having the storage yourself. You're talking about the cost of having the expertise to do the upgrades to these servers. You're talking about having the manpower around to manage this place. In some cases, you need physical security to actually secure the building to make sure nothing goes wrong there. So as compared in this example, as compared to Azure, you can see this is what is costing to being on premise. And you see this is what is costing to being on the cloud. So if you see, most of the difference here is the building has been destroyed. There's no need for a building anymore. It's on the cloud. You're not paying for the data center. There's no rental. There's no physical security required. The building is gone. In terms of networking, that's when you still need the expertise as well. But however, the networking on premise is not as simple as compared to on the cloud. So what you're seeing here now, it's now grown. Storage, it was yourself, you're managing it yourself. This is what also causes a lot of the cost on Azure. So there's different storage areas like we covered in the very first session. So the storage on the cloud, the more you use it, the price keeps going up as well. The compute, these are your virtual machines on the cloud. So again, you start seeing these differences. So one of the things you need to remember here, this pricing cost is based on some factors. Why it's cheaper? So in some cases, in Microsoft documentation, they recommend to switch off virtual machines you're not using. From my own, this is my own personal view. It might not be practical if you are a global organization or even a UK-based organization or just one country-based organization. If you operate 24 hours, 7 days a week, switching it off is going to have an impact on your organization. So again, that's something which is always up for discussion. But the cloud in itself, yes, there's more capabilities. There's always advanced things which are coming to the cloud, which sometimes don't come to the on-premise systems. So it's important for you to understand. So once you have your pricing calculator, once you have the total cost ownership calculator, you're in a position to understand what the difference is, how much it's going to cost. So the pricing calculator and the total ownership calculator, two different things. So let me show you the total ownership calculator. So this is the one here. So again, total cost ownership TCO calculator. So what you see here, you have now figured out with your pricing calculator how many servers you have in your organization. You start adding the servers here. So you can start add, and you can add as many as possible. The spec they're currently running at the moment, the databases, the storage, the network side of things. Then once you do that, you go next, and it will generate a report which you can save. So that report itself then gives you a comparison of the cost. So you're not trying to be the best person at doing maths here, but this TCO calculator does it for you. So the link to this total cost ownership calculator will be in the slides. So once the slides are shared, feel free to come in here and try out things and see exactly what will happen, exactly what cost you get. And that way you seem to get the idea. If your cost is higher than you have on premise, what tends to happen there, it becomes an argument within your organization, because they say to you, why are we spending more money than we are currently already anyway? But in many organizations, what they don't realize is the manpower, the leasing of those buildings, or the cost of just having to maintain that building. Because once you have your own data center, it also requires a lot of cooling systems, because those machines are performing high tasks, they're running high, they're running hot. So you need to make sure that data center is cool. So we'll come back to this browser shortly. So we go to the next slide. So in here, these are some of the key things to help you to reduce cost. So in terms of minimizing cost, it is always ideal to plan your Azure solution wisely. Consider the products and services and resources your organization needs. And at the same time, use that pricing, that TCO calculator to see exactly where your organization is going. When you start on this journey, also monitor the usage using Azure Advisor. And also put some recommendations within Azure. I'll show you that on the browser we're at just a few moments ago. So what that means is, if you realize there are some services you're not using, there's no need for them to be in there. You're just being charged for things you're not using. So always monitor those things. In terms of using, for free trial customers, if you're using that $200, the 200, always make sure you're not going over. Always make sure you're within that 200. Always make sure you understand that the service you're using for free is not the same as the service you're paying for. So going for reservations using the Azure hybrid benefit. So in terms of Azure reservations, what we're talking about here, we're talking about the year subscription. We're talking about the free year agreement. In some cases, when you are moving from on-premise to the cloud, they also allow you to use that Windows license you have on-premise to the cloud. You don't need to buy a new license. So again, this is again going back to some of the things we were discussing a few moments ago. Look at the low-cost locations, if possible, and if local regulations allow, always go for that. Don't say I'm going to go and use the United States because they have everything. Look at the low cost, which meets your organizational needs. Also, look at Microsoft Azure. So it's very, very important. Apart from looking at some of these offers which Microsoft do happen to give to their customers, it's also important to keep up to date of what's happening within the Microsoft world. You might realize in some cases, you see there's a cheaper product you can actually use at that moment you're looking at these things. In terms of apply, so in terms of applying, ideally you want to put some tags to your resources, to your subscriptions, to help you manage cost associated with different groups of the products and resources you're using. So these tags can be applied to groups of Azure products, to resources, to organize your billing data. So again, it looks like there's quite a lot of things here involved, but once you have these tags in place, it helps you in terms of our reporting. So again, this is the Azure cost management. So I'm going to show you the Azure cost management. So basically, this is a product which provides you with a set of tools for monitoring, allocating, and optimizing your cost, making sure you're on top with your cost, making sure you know what you're going to be looking to pay. So it's not a surprise for you to know, oh, you're paying 2,000, 3,000, but this Azure cost tool always give you that option and that visibility. So coming back to Microsoft Azure, so what you see, you can go on this blade here and you can see cost management and billing. And what you can see, I've also tagged it, it's here, but I'm going to open it from here anyway. So what you see in here, because I'm using a free subscription, so I won't have a lot of things in here. So I'm going to go into cost management. So it will load something. If you can see here, it's disabled, free trial. So what you will see in here, you start seeing your cloud cost. You can monitor your budgets. You can optimize with recommendations. So you can view your recommendations. You can also create your budget. So again, it's not a hidden cost. Everything is clear for you if you set it up. If you do not set it up, yeah, you might be surprised when the finance team are now saying, oh, we just got an invoice from Microsoft. It's a bit over the moon. What do we do? So setting up these things in the cloud helps your organization to understand some of these costs. So if you see there's cost alerts, there's budget, advisor recommendations, cost analysis, payment methods. Most of the time you won't see this. Only a global admin will have access to payment methods. This will be the organization card, so they wouldn't just expose it to everybody else. So just talking about being stuck. So before I go back to the slides, you happen to be stuck in this area. What you can do, you can select new support request. So in here, it will open a new window. And what is the issue related to? So in here, you can say Azure services. And if you see by default, it's picked up billing. It's picked up the subscription as well. So in here, I'm going to type, I'm having an issue with cost management, and then problem type. Then in here, this one here, again, if you see payment, and then in here, see, it's recommending these things, but you don't necessarily have to pick the recommended one. You can select a different one. So I'm going to select a different one here, and then next is going to take me to solutions. So what you see here is providing me some knowledge-based article for me to look at and how I can do to resolve my problem. I'm not really satisfied with this. I'm going to say no in this case and go next. So in here, this is just for the purpose of the demo. So this is not exactly what you see what will happen, but it's just to show you how you do it. So if you see in here, it's asking me when the problem started. So I'm going to say Friday, and the time I'm going to leave it as 12 a.m. And in here, I'm just going to say this is training disregard, so they don't waste their time on it. And if I have a file, I can upload it here. And if you see now, this is where we are. So the severity of this issue, it says minimal impact. It's not impacting the organization that we can't work. So if it's critical, then that means your organization is heavily affected. It's affecting business operations. So this here will give you a call depending on your SLA. Normally within 30 minutes, you get a phone call. B, which is moderate. So I'm going to go for minimal impact and preferred contact method. So you see, a support engineer will contact you over email. This one here, they'll just make a phone call to you. So I'll say email in this case, your availability, the language, support language. So in here, they try as much as they can to meet different languages available. So this is what they have in here. So we're going to leave it as English at the moment. It's picked up my name because I'm the person logged in with this account here. And now if you see it's asking me for a phone number, it's not mandatory because I said I want them to contact me by email here. So in here, I'm going to put my email address, and then I'm going to take my phone number. I don't want them calling me. So then email alone. And country region, this allows them to look for an engineer who is working in your time zone. You can select United States. What will happen there is that person in the United States will call you when they start work. So in some cases, you miss their phone call and they'll just email you, say, I tried to call you. So once you go through that, at this point here, we did not see any solution. The basics, we didn't see anything. So now is next review. And if you see, this is what we have put in. And then we go and create our support request. So if you see in here, it's creating it. So what this would do, it will generate something within the Microsoft support system, and then they'll reach out. So again, this is dependent on the SLAs you have in place with Microsoft. So we'll come back to SLAs as well, and we'll also come back to this area to show you a few more other things as well. So I'm sure you've seen the Azure cost management. So it's got these things that we just shown you in terms of our recommendations and looking at budgets. So again, this is now the support plan options available. So these are the options you can use. So again, these options, if you see here, if you have a basic subscription, technical support is not available. You have to pay for it. Trial and non-production environments, business hours, access to support engineers via email, standard, if you see 24/7, via email and phone. This one here, again, 24/7. So if it's business critical, what tends to happen is if you're in the UK region and that engineer in UK is finishing work, they'll pass it on to another engineer in another time zone. So there's always someone with you 24 hours, 7 days a week. So for those organizations who have someone on call, that person on call would then also take over away from you, and then they'll start looking at this. So if you're a business analyst, this is not for you to worry about. This will be done by the support teams who look after infrastructure, who look after networking. This is just for you to know it does exist within Microsoft Azure. So again, how else can you reach out or get some support from Microsoft? So you have MSDN, which is a developer network where there's forums, people ask questions, people share some really cool stuff. Stack Overflow, Server Fault, Microsoft Azure General Feedback, and Azure Support. That's one of my favorite one on Twitter. I just go on Twitter, I go and start a tweet at Microsoft. I write my problem there. And in some cases, what tends to happen is it's not someone from Microsoft who responds. There might be someone out there on Twitter who's had a similar issue and they're following Microsoft. Normally they'll respond, they'll give you a solution. And that in itself, it solves your problem without you thinking a lot about it. So always keep in mind of these things here. You can get support online. At the same time, there's also conferences. A conference might not be ideal to fix your problem, but these things online are always good for you to familiarize yourself with and to have a look to see what's in it. So apart from you sending a tweet, I'm going to talk about Twitter here. It's one of my best places. I go around and I ask questions and I also learn from other people. Someone might send a problem and you look at it yourself. You're thinking, okay, how do I resolve that? How did that person resolve it? So you can just look at the thread, and 10 times out of 10, you learn something and you have a takeaway for you to keep in mind or to go and implement at your organization. So again, you have a knowledge center, which is a searchable database. So again, there's people from the community, there's experts like Dan, who's on the call, Deji, a few other experts on this call as well, who go to these places, they share their knowledge, they write articles, they write blogs. So these are then verified by somebody to say, okay, yeah, this is actually the right thing here, let's verify it. So you can go to these things and look at this database. In some cases, what you're looking for might not be there. Why is it not there? So the key thing here is if you go and look for something which does not exist, you're not going to find anything. So you need to be aware of what you're asking. You need to be clear in what you're searching for. If you search for something which is specific, most of the time you'll find it. So again, we spoke about service level agreements. So in terms of our service level agreements, it's not just about support alone. So in some cases, what happens is the service goes down. Believe me or not, Microsoft also do have issues like any other organization. However, there's a service level agreements in place. This depends with what you have agreed with yourself as an organization. So the service level agreement can be based on your subscription. The service level agreement can also be based on your application. So you can say, okay, in an organization, if the service goes down, an hour is okay for it to come back. And some people, they say 30 minutes it has to come back. That 30 minutes is not guaranteed, but these are agreements you have in place to give you that assurance. And if these service level agreements are breached by Microsoft, you can also claim some money back at the end of the year and say, look, guys, you did not meet the SLAs. You need to pay up. Most of the time, they do agree. But again, they have a lot of resources in place themselves to deal with any issues. So again, the likelihood of them breaching an SLA are very slim. It does happen, but the chances are slim. So again, these are the SLAs. So if you see the numbers there, they're very, very sharp numbers. You're talking about an SLA of 99.99. So downtime of a system over a year is probably, the estimate is 52.56 minutes. That's you're talking about over a year. In a month, that's 4.32 minutes. That's how confident they are with their systems. That's how confident they have with the resources and the expertise they have within Microsoft. So again, these SLAs depend on organization and how much you are paying and agreeing with them. So again, this is all SLAs. Again, here you're talking about a web app. A web app, in this case, you can talk about Dynamics 365, Salesforce, and at the same time, a SQL database. You're talking about it here. And if you can see the SLA, it's a composite SLA is calculated by the web app SLA multiplied by the SQL database SLA, because the web app in most cases is got a SQL database. In some cases, it might not be this combination. It can be a different combination. But again, that's something which your organization should be pushing for. And in some cases, if you don't hear this conversation in meetings, put it on the table, bring value yourself and say, guys, there's something called this. Can we make sure we have it in place? If you don't have any SLAs, which is very rare. It will be a bit of a worrying sign for an organization to have no SLAs when it comes to these things. So again, these are the application SLA. So as I said in here, you have recovery times for your application. You have mean time between failures, when the application fails and when the application returns to normality again. So you need to make sure you build these processes in your organization. You need to make sure the message is also clear before you sign any paperwork with Microsoft. You need to ask these questions. If you don't ask these questions, they'll give you this fantastic product, Microsoft Azure. And if you go and challenge them, the first thing they'll tell you is, oh, look, we'll always give you these services here, but you never asked us or you never set it up yourself. So it's one of the things to consider as well when you go to the cloud. There's loads of amazing things, but if you don't look into them or if they are not set up correctly, the person to blame here is yourself and your organization. So in terms of features, so there are public preview features and there are also private preview features. So in terms of public preview features, so Microsoft might introduce something new to a service on Azure. So this will be available to all the customers for evaluation purposes. So you can log in your development environment, not in production, evaluate these features, and then once you evaluate them, provide your feedback to Microsoft, and then they'll look at the feedback. In some cases, they might make slight tweaks to it. In terms of a public preview, this is specific to specific customers. So they might have customers in East Asia who require a specific service, and there's a lot of demand for it. So they'll put this targeted to these customers. These customers will look at these features again in a development environment, see if it meets the requirement. In most of the cases, there is bugs which come out of these things. So that feedback is very, very important. And then once it's been deployed, it then goes to public preview for all customers to have a look at it as well, even though the preview was targeted at private. Why it then goes to public preview is for you to see what other customers are using. And then in some cases, you can say, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to buy that as well myself. So again, these public preview, they are available to all customers in Microsoft Azure. Private preview is also available here. So let me just show you something in here. So this is Microsoft Azure preview. So if you see, we say portal.azure.com. In this case, we say preview.portal.com. So I'm going to go back a step here and I'm going to open this one. So if you see here, straight away it's telling you this is Microsoft Azure preview. You can look at some of the new features in here, and in here it's telling you Microsoft Azure. There's no preview. This is what you're using for your organization, but for the preview service, you can look at it in here. If you see the login is here for this environment that's set up, and here is the same login, but this is where you look at the preview features. So again, familiarize yourself with these things, not to be a networking expert, not to be a storage expert, but for you to be able to be involved in these conversations, for you not to be a passenger when people start talking about these conversations in your presence. So again, I've just showed you the preview portal. It's in the slide here. So again, giving feedback, you can look at performance, networking, and at the same time, if you see in here, it shows you in a different color. So basically, that's just a setting which you can change yourself. So in that setting, you can change it in here. You can just click on here, and then you just have a different background. So this is basically a personal setting to yourself. But for me, I just tend to like the dark color of it. So just keep in mind, it's things you can do as well. So if you see a screenshot, then you log in yourself, then you're like, okay, why is the background different to mine? Again, if you see, they've sent feedback of some of the features they've seen. So again, that's the importance of having this preview. Try out things. Don't shy away in asking the question and say, okay, yeah, I didn't quite like this, or this doesn't quite work well. Just put the feedback. It only makes the product better. So again, general availability. So this has gone into public preview or private preview. You have given them the feedback, you have seen some bugs, you have seen things which needs changing. So this then gets tested, it then gets approved, it then gets verified. It goes through regression, and then it gets made available to all the customers. That's why you see in recent years, Microsoft has become really better and better at this. So you don't find a lot of bugs in their systems. Is because they go through a lot of these preview features, asking their customers, and they know themselves which customers to target as well, which will give them valuable feedback as well in most cases. So most of the time, these things are evaluated, they're tested. A very good example of a tool away from Azure is Office, Microsoft Office, where you use Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Before, that tool was not quite there. There were some issues. You try to do this, frozen error, you don't know how to fix it. But now it's gone better and better. Again, there's also a preview for things like PowerPoint. There's a preview for Word in itself. There's people out there who are experts of those things, and they look at it and they say, okay, this is working well. This breaks the formula in Excel. It needs fixing. And that's how important this feedback is to Microsoft. So if you ever use a Microsoft product, just even a computer, and you run into an issue and it asks you for feedback, please spare a minute or two to provide that feedback. That's how they can help other customers, and that's how they can improve the product as well. So have updates which are always provided within Microsoft Azure. So one of the things in itself, you can subscribe to notifications, you can keep an eye on the product roadmaps. So one of the things you can do for that is to keep yourself up to date. Microsoft Azure or any cloud product is ever changing. Things are getting better and better. So it's important for you not to sit down on something for a year. You ought to kind of keep in mind on updates. Even if they say they're releasing something in December, keep track of it and say, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to change? That's how you can get better at it. So that's the end of the slides. I'm going to go back to this screen here. How do you keep up to date with Microsoft Azure? So in here, you have cloud blogs perspectives. So you have Microsoft Azure here. So again, this is the blog where they provide updates. And believe it or not, in some cases on this blog, they do share a free book for you to read of a product they want people to understand more, because people are struggling to understand it. So if you see here, you can subscribe to an RSS feed. In here, if you see this one back from last Wednesday, how to optimize your Azure workload cost. We're talking about cost, right? So there's quite a lot of things in here. So there's always an update being posted in here. In some cases, every 2 days. In some cases, every week. So again, keep yourself up to date with these things. So that's the end of the class. So before we go to questions, one of the things is for those of you looking to do a refresher, for those of you looking to have a reference point of this training class, which is Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, kindly reach out to the admin. They should be able to help you with some details of how you can have access to the book, which you can read yourself. You can reference things and you can try things out yourself as well. Uh, we also initially spoke about having access to the Microsoft exam. Again, if you speak to the admin, if you are really strong and want to go for it, speak to the admins. There are provisions which we can have in terms of having that. Any other questions as well? Feel free to have a conversation. I'm on LinkedIn myself, or you can actually follow the conversation, or I'm on Twitter, Alexio Chandwana, so I can share my Twitter handle, and you guys can follow there if you want to. But again, there's no pressure to it. So this is my Twitter handle here. I'll just share it um, in the chat window. Okay, so for those who want to have a conversation in terms of Azure, please let us know, or just follow each other and we can share ideas and we can make each other better. Is there any other questions or anything you might want me to answer while I'm here? So if there's no any questions, or if any questions happen to arise, please do reach out to the admin or just post in the Telegram group, and we should be able to help each other from there. But thank you so much to all of you for joining this series of Microsoft Azure. And please kick on with Azure. It is one of the best things around. Have a good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks, guys.